But it's not bad. I like it. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Szasz. I'm a theologian. I teach in the School of Theology at Emory University, Canada School of Theology. I also do psychotherapy, which I call pastoral counseling. And I have interest in responsibility as well, and find myself kind of in a modern dilemma, maybe, invested in the Judeo-Christian tradition, but also enlightened, maybe not so enlightened by modern psychology and psychic determinism, those sorts of things that make believing in responsibility a struggle sometimes. I enjoyed your interpretation of the creation myth, and I thought about the point where God starts talking to himself, and I thought of kind of an editor's conference and said, let's write a good story. What kind of characters do we need to write a good story? And said, well, we could have empty heads running around bumping into one another at random, but that's kind of chaotic and doesn't have much meaning, doesn't have much drama. Let's attribute responsibility to these characters and write the story. And that makes the story much more interesting. And I can see responsibility as an attribution in one way of construing the world, in one way of construing reality. And if you're going to live in that story, that narrative plot where characters are responsible, then you have this interesting struggle of right and wrong, tragedy, drama, and so forth. Crime and punishment makes a great deal of sense. But we've got other competing narratives about who these characters are in this drama. And when I think of the way people were cared for out of religion before, I guess, a more liberal perspective on, or liberal anthropology was constructed, we tended to see people from an Orthodox perspective as everyone being capable of being responsible, everybody being capable of having the capacity to make good use or right use of the freedom that they have. There really wasn't a developmental perspective. There was no way of really saying how this tradition, some people are more able, some people are less able because of developmental deficits or limitations or so forth, and everyone was treated the same. There was expectations, and if you fell short not because you were diseased, but because you were weak. No?
Go ahead. No, I want you to finish saying.
Okay.
I mean, you know, there is no way of saying any of this. Let me just say this in your defense and my own. Yeah. There's no way of describing any of this without some kind of a prejudgment being built into the very picture, the language, which you are already doing. Because you are saying when everybody was dealt with the same. Go ahead.
Well, this is a long preamble. Somebody's urging me to ask my question behind me.
Well, it's a good preamble so far.
The question I have is, how do we need to speak of responsibility in degrees? Like, if I expect somebody I'm working with to be responsible, don't I have to sort of make a discernment as to what degree of responsibility they have? What does freedom really mean for them, and not make...
Well, give a specific example. That's a very, very important issue. What do you have in mind? Of course, a schizophrenic or a drug addict. I mean, let's make this... I like to... Okay. You know, when I talk abstractly, or in parables. But when I talk about this kind of issue now, give me... And you say you do counseling, so what do you have in mind? Who is this? Who is this other person?
I got a few examples in mind.
Because you see, you're already building into this idea that he somehow is less responsible than you are.
Well, I think
you already convinced the whole audience of this. You haven't convinced me.
I didn't follow that last part.
See, there is already an inequality where somehow you're going to be nice to him because he's not as responsible as you are.
Well, I'm responsible for what I say, but not for how you interpret it, I don't think.
No, in life, I mean, but so, I know, I'll let you finish it. I mean, who is this person?
Well, one person that comes to mind, a woman that we might, if we were into diagnosis, might diagnose her as multiple personality or borderline personality.
Be careful, because I'm going to make mincemeat out of you.
Well, I said if we were into diagnosis. Not
But no, but
everybody.
the example you picked is I have to restrain myself.
Sure. All right. Let's skip that.
All right. No, let's stick to that. That's too good. Hold it right there. Hold it right
All right.
there.
A woman.
Hold
who
it.
is-
No, let's hold it. It's too good. It's too
Okay.
good. You say she has a diagnosis of multiple personality. I say she is an evil liar who does not take responsibility for herself, but instead makes up this story like a 5-year-old that I didn't do it, Johnny did it. The non-existent brother. Every 5-year-old said that as soon as he's caught.
Well,
This is what we have to unlearn. This is a highly complex theatrical performance, which people do.
she also thinks she's an evil liar, and I'm trying to convince her she's not.
Well, I am not suggesting roasting her in, in hell forever. She's not an evil liar, obviously. She is somebody in trouble, like a child caught by powerful parents, and is trying to get out of this trouble.
She was given a way to be raised by
I
her
don't doubt
parents.
that this is a troubled person.
Very, very ill.
Yeah, she is a troubled person. But as soon as you do not give her as much responsibility for making those stupid statements, making that particular imagery, which is no different than the imagery you're going to suggest to her, whether it's a diagnosis or take responsibility or, what's bothering you, whatever you're going to say, to my mind, has the same weight of responsibility, or vice versa, that whatever she is saying.
I agree with
This is a dialogue between two equals, and as soon as you treat her less equally, I disagree with you. But let me go back to an earlier statement of yours to show you how there are two ways of looking at this picture, because in some ways you were harking back to some 13th century Christian situation, right, where people were taken care of. Well, there are two beautiful words. People were not treated as though they were all equally responsible. Troubled people, and let's use that version, especially if they're poor, destitute. Maybe they gambled away their money. Maybe they did something wrong. Maybe they committed some crimes. Maybe in some ways, for their own fault or for their parents' bad upbringing, whatever, they were in trouble. But there were two things which were extended to them: charity and another thing, mercy. I have no objection to courts being merciful. I have great objection to finding people psychiatrically unfit to stand trial, or sending some man or woman to a mental hospital for 3 weeks after burning down the man while she's sleeping in a bed, or cutting off his penis, like this lady in North Carolina or South Carolina, who spent 3 or 4 weeks in a mental hospital. See, that is the evil of the society and of the profession, in my opinion, and of the legal profession, which are like Siamese twins. There's no distinction. The law and the mental health profession are like Siamese twins in this whole thing. They can't be separated. They do this together. So what you bring up is a very important point. Perhaps we can talk about that more. This attempt to quantify responsibility. Now this comes up with, are schizophrenics responsible for pushing somebody under a subway and so on, Well, this is every day. You can't open the papers anymore without seeing these stories. And nobody is held responsible. That's why there are many more people now in mental health. There have always been. There are many more people under mental health coercion, control, than under criminal control. I mean, we act as though that wasn't the case. I mean, this is a major system of social controls that we have.
Thank you.
On the premise, thank you, based on the premise that somehow these people are less responsible, and therefore the only people who are considered to be fully responsible are in prison. And even there, by the way, they are no longer considered responsible because they are given psychiatric drugs now. So this is a very far-reaching issue. Go ahead, please.
I think I'm too short.